anywhere in the supply chain. I think, wow, how are we going to work with that? Because it's, it could be 15, 20 steps away from stuff we're purchasing. But we've got to ensure that people living in, people working on our products in many other continents are not living through traumatic times. And this also makes a difference in the way we can sell things. Nobody wants to sit in a leather chair or leather seat in an Aston Martin thinking 3 people died making it. So we have to monitor the slavery issues. In Africa, a very big deal is, of course, bribery. There is bribery in procurement functions, and it's not focused on Africa. I have to tell you, it's everywhere. And again, how contracts are awarded. You've got to be able to monitor people as well. So this whole thing of monitoring organizations, people, products, processes, projects is now impacted on our supply chain responsibility. And normal, traditional supply chain procurement functions of visits, and that guy looks like a good guy to me, doesn't cut it anymore. And there are legal implications, there are revenue implications, there are risk factors associated with it. So what these fourth industrial revolution technologies do is they give you instruments to be able to address these things. Nothing is risk-free. So we cannot say there is zero risk at something. But what we can say is, give me some idea, a guidance on should I be going ahead with this, and how do I mitigate the risk involved. And so just like every other part of the world, which is now data-driven, procurement and supply chains has to embrace these technologies, which are going to completely revolutionize and are already revolutionizing the way we work. Moving on, if I can, let's have a look. Okay, so how do you apply fourth industrial revolution technologies in the fight against COVID-19? So COVID-19 is ostensibly a crisis of trust. It is not a crisis of a disease. It is actually of trust. We do not any longer trust each other. My own daughter, I'm in her apartment right now, has had COVID-19, and we don't trust, our neighbors any longer. We don't trust where we can meet people. We don't trust where the products are coming from. Is it coming from China? Is it coming from Wuhan? Is it coming from areas of the world where it's, intense issues around COVID-19? It has become a crisis of trust between people, between countries, between suppliers. Products are coming which don't function, and it's really highlighted it, and this is all highlighted, I have to say, the responsibility of the supply chain and us becoming key workers, which I'm going to talk about a bit later. So when it comes to trust, one of the biggest instruments to create trustless systems is something called blockchain. So blockchain is like a huge ledger in the sky. It's like a transparent Excel spreadsheet which everyone can see in the sky, and it's immutable. So that means you cannot change you cannot change the numbers. You cannot change what you inputted. So you can't change the history of something. You can watch the entire life cycle of a product or even of a person, to see have they been in bribery, have many, have they been incriminated before, etc., etc. So the technology was developed primarily first in China, I have to say, and I sit on a kind of government body over there, and 70% of blockchain is actually controlled in China, which is a big market. In the future, it's considered to be worth $103 trillion. Big stuff, big stuff. And the first application that we're making here is to build a blockchain certification process in order to monitor the products life cycle, the people where it touches, organizations are involved, and even the processes that are there, and to transparently show it so that it can be interrogated by anyone. You can make it into a private blockchain. This is a consortium that's been led by my colleague here, Bernard, of Transnational Transparent Procurement Foundation. It's a not-for-profit foundation for supply chains in the sector. And we're doing it on behalf of around, initially it was about 300 retailers who came to us to ask for this. Now I see in the last few weeks, there's a pledge site and we've got about 2,000, just under 2,000 in addition, on top of that. And so it's, you can transparently see if the product, where it has touched areas around COVID-19, because you cannot say it is of zero risk. However, it's not enough to watch the health risk, because we are procurement specialists. So health is very important to us, but the economics of it is actually as important. And if you look now right around the world, the crisis we've moved from a health crisis to an economic crisis. So all around the world, governments are trying to release the lockdowns, not because they think, oh yeah, it's this great idea to take a risk. They are releasing lockdowns because the risks, attending risks to the economy that are crashing southwards very fast. And so they've got to take a calculated risk. How many more people will die if you release lockdown earlier? If you release it earlier. But is it then worth the economics of the country? So this is a balance between the financial and the non-financial risks. Even the issues now we're talking about in terms of countries doing track and trace on apps for COVID-19, it's a balance between the freedom and liberty of people, and I'm going to talk about this a bit later on, and the fact that it's an app that is for our good to try and track where people had touched others with COVID-19. But yet it is intrusive in our data. So it is the balance there of financial and non-financial risk that we're looking at. So in this, in addition to just the blockchain element, we have developed something based around something we've been doing in procurement for about 10 years, a theoretical framework called the social earnings ratio, which has been used in Social Value Act in this country, and in India and Indonesia and Mauritius and about 5 different EU commissions, in order to monitor the impact, the financial and non-financial impact our behaviors have. And it's a fast data instrument. So the point being that in a procurement official, senior manager, does not just have, okay, this is a critical risk to my business, this product, or the supplier, but also can I take a stance on where is my risk appetite, and is this go beyond my risk appetite, or is it below my risk appetite? Because again, these things have a huge financial implications, and our responsibility as procurement guys is not just to do with keeping people safe, which actually in normal circumstances, it's just a health and safety certification. Now it's become a critical issue, but also to save the costs for the organization going forward. So it's all about risk mitigation. And again, using a combination of AI and blockchain, we're now moving into being able to actually make decisions very rapidly. I'm talking about in milliseconds. I'm not talking about long reports, committees, etc. Because the world has changed quite considerably. There are 2 new technologies that are coming forward, which are not yet prevalent, but we must be very aware of them. So Internet of Things allows us to actually put in code the control and behavior of our products around us. I'm going to tell you very simply, just to illustrate some ideas. We can have, for example, in the Internet of Things, which is everything connected to the internet, we can have a racist doorbell. So we can have a doorbell that rings. The AI says, well, actually, I happen to know that you're a racist, Olinga, so I'm not going to, it's a black guy at the door. I'm not going to make it ring. The guy can keep pressing, but actually you won't hear it. So we can put code within a technology now to make it, and this goes to, homophobic kettle or whatever you want. So suddenly everything around us can be sentient, has a knowledge base. And this can change our society. And again, as procurement people, we've got to be responsible for ensuring that behaviors, from products we're buying isn't changing, is aligned to the behavior of our organization, to the values of our organization. So there's the fact that there's now ideology can be placed into products. And we have to be able to monitor that. And the Internet of Things, so it can be a force for great good, or it can be a force for terrible things. Finally, on 5G. 5G, people think 5G is just very fast 4G. I was very big in the mobile phone sector. Before I retired about 12 years ago, I was big in that sector. Actually, even before 12 years ago. But especially in Africa, with MTN, Vodacom, and Safaricom, and Go in Nigeria, and so on. And I wrongly thought that 5G is just faster 4G, but actually it's not at all. It's a complete different ball game. 5G has multiple data layers, and it's not just faster, but the latency is a lot quicker, so that we can control things like driverless cars fast, so it can make decisions. And decisions are actually done at a local level, not at a cloud level. And so what it means is that 5G infrastructure is required to control everything around us, but also to report back in procurement everything around the world. So we can truly track products and processes and so on throughout the world. And there's no longer will be excusable to say, actually, I didn't know, it wasn't told me, they didn't fill out the form correctly, because we can automatically accumulate this data and react to it very fast as a driverless car has to react in a dangerous situation. So 5G represents a whole new infrastructure, which is as great as and greater than the internet. It is a backbone spine. And so these four technologies actually do apply very much. Especially the last two apply for the future. They're not here right now. They're coming right now. But the blockchain and AI are part of our response to COVID-19. Our challenge here in TTP, even though we've had a big request, and we've formed a center at Birmingham City University in the UK, where TTP is actually headquartered, in order to do the research. And we thought we had, frankly, till we've actually came up with a solution back about a year ago. We wrote some white papers on it. You'll see it, about 12 different white papers out there. And we thought we had till September this year to release it. But the demand now, because of COVID-19, has overwhelmed us. And we're having to accelerate everything very fast and work with people like you guys in order to accelerate it. So please do approach us to give us your assistance, because we need as many places to test it with, as many suppliers who are willing to work with us on this, because it's a consortium approach. It's a technology set for the sector, for the business itself, and we need everyone to agree to that. So okay, let's move on. Right, okay, right. What will be the future impact of COVID-19 crisis in procurement? Okay. After all this over, it's not the same. What's become very clear is that suddenly key workers, people who are essential to our society, include health, which it was pretty obvious before, wasn't it? Health. I mean, I don't think that's a big surprise. However, logistics has become a big key worker identity. And who would believe that the logistics sector are now considered to be key workers, because the crisis that we faced at the consumer level has been getting product to people, toilet rolls in the UK, getting hand sanitizers, getting PP masks, and getting the products to actually work and do as they say. Who would believe this would become the big thing? And no longer has just-in-time supply chain been good enough. It has blown our systems completely. People and countries and whole industries have collapsed because we in the logistics sector really were overwhelmed by the demand, and our systems were not made for this kind of crisis. So it has changed the way we in procurement must behave going forward. We are now going to become primarily data managers in the supply chain, not people who take the cheapest price and give contracts, etc. It's about ensuring that every product is not just safe, but economic, and does not surpass critical limits that we set in each organization. So it has changed considerably, and the future is, I'm afraid, going to say there's going to be much more around instruments like Fourth Industrial Revolution, rank blockchain, and these things we have to teach to our procurement specialists. No one goes into procurement saying, they're thinking that they're going to save the world. And I always used to say, no child goes to mummy and says, "Mummy, I want to be a chief procurement officer," because we have never positioned our responsibility at that point. But this COVID-19 crisis has accelerated us to that place where we now are at the top table. Usually in procurement, people are not sitting, driving businesses forwards. They're not CEOs. They're often not on the board. They often have, because it's a process driven. Now it's become quite obvious that we are actually the key worker that drives the world, and that we must step up to this. We must learn these new technologies. We must acquire these skills, because we are being looked upon to actually resolve some of the world's biggest problems. And no one can doubt now, procurement has become a critical factor within the COVID-19. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this issue around China. So China has been obviously a main supplier to the world for quite a few years now, and not just because it's cheaper, but the quality is great and they have scaled. However, the response, there is now a crisis of trust around China. But let me step back and talk about why China has managed to hit the COVID-19 target so quickly. I mean, here in Britain, we have 30,000 who've died. In China, it's a few thousand, just 3 or 4. So you have to say, wow, how is that possible? How can Britain, with only 60 million population, 70 million population, get such a large response? You see, China's belief in data is this. America believes that data belongs to companies. They believe that I give you the product for free, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, etc., Gmail. So you goddamn give me your data so I can sell more stuff to you. That's the deal. That's the transaction that's made. So data belongs to corporates in America. In Europe, we believe data belongs to us individuals. So we say my data, my way, and there's a whole process around GDPR to put that into practice. But it has been a failure. There's no question that hitting the cookie button 20 times a day does not mean that it's my data at all. It just means I can't be bothered to read the terms and conditions that have been put in front of me. So that's not been a success. China way ahead and said actually data belongs to the government, because they believe that their responsibility is for the corpus of society, for the whole of society, not to do with individual rights. They believe that actually they should monitor the data because they should look, for example, filter out bad actors, hence they have a social credit system. They should filter out bad products. They should be able to monitor movement and so on. And anyone who goes to China knows now that you need to do your fingerprints before you go. You need facial recognition. You know, when last time I went, you know, as I approached the immigration, my name came up on LED. I didn't even say anything. It just said hello, Olinga. You know, so it's actually they monitor movements on trains and everything of people. Now, to us, you know, in the West, that seems like, oh my God, this is like, you know, this is a dystopian society. Actually, this is terrible that um, that you know the government is controlling us all, and but you know, look at the look, for example, look at this health app that's going around now. You know, people are going, oh, well, maybe I'd rather die than give my data to the government. Wow, I'd rather die than give my data. I mean, what is going on here? Is we have lost that trust. We give our data to Facebook, we give our data to Google, to Amazon to sell more shit to us, but we're not going to give data to save my life. So China went, we will manage your data. Absolutely, they don't believe in too much in individual rights. They do believe in the society. And I always give a case of a year and a half ago, a woman crossed the street in Shanghai. And this is a true story, by the way. And she was jaywalking, and as she crossed the street, the camera picked up on her face and said, "This person is jaywalking." It went up on a huge billboard in Shanghai, and with her name, because it searched the internet for that face. She said, "Actually, I wasn't even there. Actually, I was in another city." And the Chinese government went, "Oh yeah, software. Never mind. It'll get better." Now, if this was New York, we'd have 5 lawsuits before 5 p.m., wouldn't we? Well, individual rights have been, you know, curtailed, etc., etc. But the Chinese go, look, we have 1.4 billion people. We have 70 countries with One Belt, One Road initiative. We have a huge global responsibility. We can't look after individual rights. We got to look after the rights of the whole body. And so eggs will be broken and mistakes will be made and software will get better. And so their approach has been different, which meant that during COVID-19, they knew already the figures immediately, where people were, how many people were there, what to cut out, what the dangers were, etc. Only in the rest of the world, we're now only talking about we need health apps, you know, we need things to give for us to give our responsibility across. Okay, so you know there are you know there are dangers. I'm looking at some of the great comments actually here, but you know about from Michael Zhang here and so on and others. So you know, I'm not saying to you, of course, I sit on this Ministry of Commerce committee called China E-commerce Blockchain Committee, and you know, 7-person, and we have big responsibility and for the country as a kind of a regulator. But I'm not, you know, I'm not hidden the fact that there are some issues around this area. But I think it's not so much the crisis we're going to face around China. It's now the crisis, the geopolitical crisis is around our data. We've got to get used to surrendering our data and safeguarding it. And one of the things that we're going to do at this Birmingham City University for Fourth Industrial Revolution Center with TTP there and some other of our organizations there. We have a 5G center there we're putting there, and a fintech center there, is we're bringing an institute, a ideology and code institute, and so that we can actually ensure that the data we're creating has at its roots ethical boundaries. It's too late to try and self-regulate the market later on. You've got to put it at its beginning. And in fact, you guys are the first people in the world to hear about this new institute that we're setting up. I've not actually shared that with anyone. So that's kind of exciting for me to finally let the cat out of the bag there. And we have around 20 odd universities who agree to collaborate in this process. So I think, you know, it's a big thing to say surrendering our data for our well-being. I am, what day is it today? 8th. I'm 60 years old in 3 days' time. I know I look like 21. I appreciate that. But the fact is, an old guy like me is against my soul to lend my data to Google and etc. I go, oh my God, they're taking over my data because I'm old school. My values are bit last Thursday, old hat. But I've got to accept anyone, you can't, without doing data share now, you are almost impossible to work in society. You know, anyone who wants to, for example, get WeChat will very quickly find out if they don't agree to the terms, they don't get to talk to the people in China. You know, so we have to accept that actually data is the new currency of our lives, is the new currency in procurement, and that we are now that currency managers in procurement. And so we must accept, we must willingly embrace this. We must look at these new technologies that provide this for us and learn how to do it in a safer and better way. At this point, I think it's probably a good idea if I take a stop and open up to any questions people would like to ask. You are welcome to put the questions onto the webinar chat if you wish, if it helps. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Olinga, and an advanced happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
For men who turn 60 in Kenya, we usually have a ritual, so you must speak to me afterwards.
Really? Oh my God. I'm catching a flight if I could.
So you talk about, and I know there will be questions coming through, but let me start off by asking, you know, with this new realization around 5G, AI, blockchain, and so on, how then do companies' purpose, vision, strategy, how should those evolve within the digital age? Because then if we're saying that procurement then needs to move to data managers, then I believe that our role will then be strategic, sitting around the table. So what should that discussion look like?
Yeah, this is a really interesting point, Rose. Thank you. You know, so first, if I say to you that, you know, I have been quite vehement in my put down of procurement sector, of procurement managers, because they're very process driven people. We are very process driven people. And so they didn't sign up to save the world. And so they've always afraid of taking the new roles out there that will bring much greater responsibility. They went, what? Well, I didn't sign up. I just want to do an order and get paid and go home. No. And thus, you know, they haven't fulfilled roles on boards and as you quite rightly say, strategic roles out there. And I said, well, this is not good enough. You know, we are good enough to actually sit on boards and run companies and listed companies and so on. The difference that the approach that we're taking here at TTP is this. Usually, this is something that is done to us. This is something like Google does it to us, Facebook does it to us, you know, and so on. And Amazon, you know, takes our data and we go, okay, I want this product, so I'll give you my data. And there have been attempts in recent past, in the space of fourth industrial revolution, to try and do it to us. And Facebook Libra has been a great example of them trying to bring in blockchain technologies, where they say in a consortium for commercial use, they will put this together. Vodafone was part of it, eBay was part of it, so was MasterCard and Visa and so on, PayPal. Now, that was for a commercial purpose, and they did not win the hearts and minds of the rest of the world. So that project has right now collapsed. IBM, for example, have their own solution, but again, only a small set of suppliers. Here at TTP, we've taken a much bigger route to this. We said we are going to take a consortium of everyone in supply chain who wants to join. We now have altogether 165,000 members. That's incredible. Bernard is responsible for at least 45,000 of that, you know. So we have taken a route that the sector needs to come together, and we must agree within this large, not for profit, no agenda, no commercial agenda, mutually agree the direction it goes into. And you know, that's why we want people to join TTP. We want people to come together, and to webinars like this for us to learn. It's very easy for us to go, this is the solution, but is it the solution? But we can't prevaricate either. So I think the first steps is that the senior managers in procurement and all down the line of management have to say, I will first get into dialogue like this, ask the questions, learn, so that there's also safety in numbers, so that we as an industry move to a better world. No one, we were surprised. You know, we have around of this 165,000, 7,000 are C-suite members, big multinationals. Usually they're very quiet, but they've been very vocal around COVID-19 because, wow, they can't hide. And suddenly it's hit them very hard. And so they've said, look, right now we need the solution immediately, and we want you to focus on this point. And so, you know, I would urge A, get some knowledge, B, join consortiums. I'd be grateful if you join TTP, but you know, there may be others, I'm not sure. And actually contribute toward the future of the world. You have a destiny now in supply chains, in procurement, which is way beyond what you thought. You now are a critical worker. You are a worker in society. The society is now looking at you and dependent on your input. And we have to step up to it. If not now, when? If not now, when?
Okay, interesting thoughts. How do we build the right skills and manage talent during this transition? Where do we start?
Okay, I think the truth is, it's too late for old people like me. Okay, so the old guard must accept that it's not going to be the same. They won't even have the skill sets. I hardly have the skill sets, you know, to move into this new world. This is a young person's game. You know, we're very excited, for example, at TTP to have lots of women who've joined. We are, women are not usually in blockchain. Let me tell you, women are not using blockchain at all. And we have a huge portion of women who've joined and a lot of Black women who've joined, which is really heartwarming for me. I think we've got to go, okay, part of that, you know, circular economy is to come up with solutions that we would like to, ideologically to have. One of the things that we have developed, for example, is the idea of a token reward to our suppliers. So let us say you make a purchase from us, and I say I'll pay you 99% in cash, but 1% as a token, which you can redeem if you follow these set of aligned values to us. If you have no slavery in your supply chain, if you don't use these people, you know, bribery if you sign up to anti-bribery, know your customer, know your supplier metrics, if you agree to open certification of all your data. Now you can say, I don't need that 1%, 2%. I can do without it. That's up to you. But 1 or 2% is a huge amount of money. So this way we are nudging the supply chain to the behavior right down to supply chain. And that supplier uses the same token to reward their suppliers and so on. Token economics is becoming a big deal. You know, it made a lot of noise first in the crypto world a few years ago, 2-3 years ago. Thankfully, the crypto side has died down, but the idea of token rewards is refreshing, and it can lead to a circular economy of good. So these are all stuff that young people can actually understand. They understand Bitcoin, they understand mobile phones, they're much more willing to open up their data. The older guys like me, you know, we're still a bit leviathans, and but the responsibility we can take is provide this education for free where we can, and if not for free, for the minimum cost, to bring the youth, because they are the saviors of us in the future.
Okay, thank you for that. I have a question from Rose Kinuthia, who says, 5G seems set to be part of the future of the world. However, health concerns on 5G have been raised. What is your take on these? Are there health concerns? And if so, what are they and how can we mitigate against them?
Yes, there's, as far as I remember, and I made most of my money from 2G, and so I had about 164 patents in that area many years ago. So as far as I remember, the fact is that every new technology like 2G, especially in the mobile phone sector, 2G, 3G, 4G, has had huge health concerns. And I'm sure that there's some truth in it all. I don't think you can dismiss this. But as the question suggests and uses the word mitigate, I can see on the chat, we got to look at how we can mitigate this rather than say we won't use it, because every technology, everything has this terrible part to it as well. Now, a lot of these things are, of course, conspiracy theories. Again, they're real. The fact is, a conspiracy theory doesn't mean you should dismiss it. You just say, okay, if it's a real concern for people, then it means they will not adopt it, or this technology, if they think it's harmful to them. So that's why we have set up a 5G center, and we are working on not the technology parts, but actually these communication issues around how to communicate 5G for good. That it can be a powerful good. I think and it's early days for us, I have to say. We've got some major suppliers on board, major names that we've all heard of. But because they found that, there's already a 6G, a 7G, and an 8G standard in development already, because the mobile phone sector moves that way. But for the first time, they have found a technology that is prevalent across every sphere of our society. And so it is not a technology solution, it's actually an ideology solution that we need, something that protects people and children and so on. I remember the early days, if you had an aerial on a phone, they'd say holding it next to your ear, you get cancer here. They had some people with cancer cells around this sector, this area, and so on and so on. All these things, I'm sure, had a smidgen of truth in them as well. But so the technology got to get better, but the way we respond to technology is the key issue. And often, what is always kind of slightly amusing to me is that technologists, like especially in the 5G sector, and also even the politicians, like in China, are usually the worst at conveying what they're trying to do. They think it's a technology solution they're bringing, for example, in 5G sector, and they talk in those terms. Not at all. They don't talk about the empowerment it's bringing to parts of the world. Look at Africa. Africa has been lit up by mobile phone payment systems and so on. It is not the technology that's exciting. It's the fact that it allowed peer-to-peer transactions to happen easily, even if you don't have bank accounts and so on. What the Chinese technology of Alipay and WeChat Pay has done is completely revolutionized payment systems. So the question, there is no absolute quick answer to this. The fact is that we have to pay as much focus on the non-technical parts of 5G than the technical parts, because they are the ones that will drive adoption. And I am pretty confident that it's going to happen. We're doing it, but others will do it too.
Excellent. I think that's a good place to leave it, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and it's not an oncoming train. So thank you very much, Professor Olinga. I'll invite Ben to perhaps give some closing remarks at this point.
There is a question I see, by the way, has been put up. So I just say that you considering challenges seen in distribution. This is from Margaret.
Yes, go ahead.
Right, considering challenges seen in distribution, coordination of the supply chain. If it's streamlined and the same using blockchain, and what efficiencies can be used to sell this. Okay, so the great thing about blockchain is that it does not mean we have to all, and answering this question, it does not mean we all have to agree to the same set of certification. In other words, you know, the way that normally we look at procurement, supply chain certification, we think that we all say, all right, you mustn't have mercury, so we have to have a certificate that you must have mercury, and we all agree you must have mercury. But now we're looking at certifications, all kinds of myriad of things which are different between organizations. I, in my own business, may say, well, in my retail business, we're worried about slavery. Another one may say, actually, I don't care about slavery. I'm much more worried about mercury, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Blockchain is a ledger platform technology. So it means that every organization, we don't have to have streamlining as the great question that's been put forward. We don't have to have agreed streamlining of our sets of things that we're going to monitor. We can all say, if you want to deal with me, you've got to put these, you've got to adhere to these parameters and transparently display them in the blockchain, which is quite different to the one next to me. Another supplier will say, well, mine are different. I've been working on work in the UK government to do with the frictionless trade. Britain has come out of Brexit, and now it takes 10 years maybe to do new agreements to trade. We haven't got that time. So what we're doing here is looking at using blockchain for each country, for each country to be able to say, actually, these are the parameters you've got to adhere to if you want to trade with me. And that way they can monitor it, they can tax the transaction, and so on. So blockchain is not it doesn't come from the area of agreement of certification of what the process is. It comes from the area of transparency, of being able to show it and see it. Thank you. Sorry, Bernard, go ahead.
Thank you, Prof. And thank you, Rose. Thank you, everyone, for attending, for taking your time. I hope you've learned. TTP, welcome all of you to join. We'll be organizing quite a bit of this. And one of the reasons for working with Birmingham City University is to provide and avail education at almost free, if not free, on this fourth industrial revolution to enhance adoption to supply chain professionals, especially in Africa, which is a dependent supply chain on the West and China. So I want to thank you all. As Prof mentioned, we have launched maybe on the April 21st, I'm not sure, 20th, the coronavirus clearance certificate, which is a blockchain safety certificate with the Birmingham City University, getting a lot of traction, being trialed in the UK. But if you feel you'd like to participate, or whether your organization would like to trial that, especially for purchases out of high-risk locations in China, Italy, and all those places that we call hotspot now, and who knows where this COVID-19 is going. So we'll look forward for our other webinars coming up later today in the afternoon. Use this one to learn and go back and impact at your places of work, at your places of businesses, and let's get supply chain and procurement and logistics sitting at the table. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Prof. Thank you all for attending. See you, and let's look forward to the next session, which will be sent to you via email. Thank you all, and keep safe. Bye.